सो एक जनरल व्यू में अगर ये स्पिरिट ही एक्चुअल एग्जिस्टेंस है, then we are not able to see spirits. Then does that mean that there is a dimension which we cannot perceive? जहां पे ये स्पिरिट्स रहते हैं, क्योंकि अगर आत्मा ही आपको जिंदा रख रही है, द मोमेंट दिस आत्मा लीव्स द बॉडी, वेयर डज इट गो? अनकॉन्शियस लेवल पे जो चीजें हैं वो जो हम परसीव नहीं कर सकते, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. One of the first kolas that I attended, it was a family kola. A lot of energy is required.
Yeah.
If you are there, I mean, if you are witnessing a kola, you will wonder. हम लोग तो मतलब 2 बार जॉगिंग मतलब 1000 स्टेप जॉग करने के बाद हालत खराब हो जाती है। यहाँ पे पता नहीं कितने स्टेप्स जाते हैं, और इट्स नॉट जॉगिंग, इट्स वेरी, क्या कहते हैं, बहुत इंटेंस होता है ये रिचुअलिस्टिक डांस। इट्स नॉट इजी। There are a lot of miraculous feats they perform, they, with fire, with, sometimes it's with a sword. पता नहीं इतना फुट ऊंचा वो लगाते हैं उनके ऊपर, ठीक है?
Yeah. Huh.
हाँ, आनी वगैरह जो है, आई मीन द हेड गियर या हेड गियर के ऊपर जो लगता है, those things weigh a lot. It weighs more than the person himself. Yet they wear it and they dance and they are able to carry themselves like anything. That's superhuman.
Hi guys. In this episode of Discovery of an Author, we sit down with the amazing K. Hari. K. Hari is an author and a screenwriter and has written multiple fiction. And in this particular episode, we discuss with him his first non-fiction book, which is Daiva. Now, Daiva was a very particularly interesting book because it had a lot of amazing information about the Bhuta Kola traditions. I think the ones that you have seen in the movie Kantara. And in this conversation, me and Hari, we try to understand the entire tradition, the region that it belongs to, where it is coming from, how do people do it, what are the belief systems, what is spirit worship, what is spirit, what is consciousness, and how can humans interact with the higher deities, and how is the entire process actually culminated into the form of ritual and into the form of a very beautiful program that you see, a very beautiful celebration that you see in the form of Bhuta Kola. Watch this episode with a very open mind. These are very ancient, old traditions which have been, carried on till date, and they have proven their mettle in the test of time. And very beautiful traditions. So I humbly request you to watch this episode with a very open mind, and I'm sure you'll get to understand amazing, never seen or heard before facts about the spirit worship, about India's Bhuta Kola traditions, and also about the theory of consciousness that me and Hari discussed. And guys, please, if you are liking the kind of content that we're bringing out and the kind of authors that we're bringing to you, please subscribe to our channel. This is the only way in which we can grow and continue to bring you such amazing authors on the platform. I hope you really enjoy this episode. Thank you. Take care. Okay, Hari, we are live. Sorry, not live. We have started the recording. And Hari, thank you first of all for taking out time from your busy schedule and coming on the podcast. I have been really looking forward to this podcast because I am actually a fan of your book Daiva. Thank you and welcome to this podcast, Hari.
Thank you so much for having me here, Raghav, and it's a pleasure to be here. It's a
Thank you,
nice
thank you.
podcast dedicated only to authors, so yeah, it's good.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I always tell all the authors that come on the podcast that we exist only because of authors like you. Had you guys not written books, we wouldn't be there, right? So we really want people to write great books on all the subjects, and then it's our job as well to make sure that people discover. So we don't want people just to discover the books. We want people to discover the authors also. Because if somebody can form a connection with you, they are going to read all of your books. That's what we are trying to do with the podcast. Great. Hari, we're going to have a discussion on your book Daiva, and also we're going to explore a lot of other books and other verticals as well with you. And I'm going to start your book with a quote which I found absolutely fantastic because the book was so powerful. This is a quote: "Divination and spirit possession are two supernatural concepts that have been deeply intertwined in many cultures and have existed ever since humankind decided to find a reason for their existence. These two supernatural phenomena have been part of many horror stories and films. The fact that these concepts are found all over the world speaks volumes about how the human mind is connected at a deeper subconscious level or at a primordial evolutionary level. Beautiful, powerful line, Hari. And I'm going to show your book to people. It's a great book. I absolutely love the cover. It was a live image. Absolutely love the way the book has also come out. Hari, let's start with the first question directly. Yeah. So
Mm.
we'll start with the basics and we'll move ahead from that. Why did you write this book, and for what kind of audience did you write it for?
Every author has a lot of things to tell, right? That's the reason why they write. And sometimes it's not because they want a lot of people to read it. Sometimes it's just to get those things out of, your heart. And sometimes writers write because they are very passionate about certain subjects. So for me, as a child who was growing up in Delhi, I come from a South Indian family, and every year, it was only during the summer vacations that I would go back to my hometown. And I would meet my dadis and nani, and they'd tell me the stories about the local legends and the folk tales from the region. And these stories would, fascinate me. Okay. So it's those stories which kind of stayed with me. And I always, when I came back to Delhi again, not Delhi exactly, it's Gurgaon, so it's the concrete jungle, and my hometown is like in the middle of dense forest. So I had this, क्या कहते हैं, for the next 11 months, there's this longing as to when I'll go back. Okay.
Hmm.
And all these stories that my grandmothers, both of my grandmothers used to tell, they were from their own region. So my paternal grandmother, she comes from Kerala. The maternal grandmother, she comes from Mangalore, Udupi. ठीक है, सो दोनों विच इज इन कर्नाटका.
Karnataka.
तो दोनों जगहों की कहानियां मुझे सुनने को मिलते थे. और कहानियों में क्या होता है, जो दादी नानी की कहानियों में ना मोस्टली या तो वो पुराणों से उठाई हुई कहानियां होती है. ठीक है. या फिर ऐसे जो रीजनल जो डेटीज होते हैं. ठीक है. तो उनकी कहानियां सुन सुन के आई ऑलवेज वांटेड टू नो मोर अबाउट देम. देन अगेन सम ऑफ द स्टोरीज हैड दिस सुपरनैचुरल एंटिटीज, योर घोस्ट्स एंड योर डीमंस एंड ऑल दोज एन्चेंट्रेसेस. तो वो भी बहुत फैसिनेट करती थी. सो दैट्स हाउ आई स्टार्टेड राइटिंग विद हॉरर. आई स्टार्टेड विद हॉरर क्योंकि वहां से वो इंस्पिरेशन आता था. ठीक है. सिमिलरली, even if you look at Daiva, which is my first non-fiction, it is not a horror book. It's more about the society and culture of the southern part of the country. But then if you look at those stories, उसमें ये folklore के elements आते हैं, supernatural elements भी आते हैं. So somewhere, वो कहते हैं ना कि the fruit doesn't fall far away from the tree. तो वही वाला एक वो है. So इसके बीच में ये क्या हुआ था कि when I was like 7 or 8 years back, there was a time when my mother was very worried about my future and my career and my marriage and all those things. So that time she was going to meet all these astrologers to find out कि इसको क्या हो रहा है, इसकी मति भ्रष्ट क्यों हो रही है, वगैरह वगैरह. And that was the time when I was kind of uh, थोड़ा अपने रेगुलर जो आपका एक करियर पाथ होता है, मैं वहां से थोड़ा स्ट्रे ऑफ कर रहा था. स्ट्रे ऑफ नहीं, दैट आई वाज एक्चुअली टेकिंग द पाथ व्हिच वाज
Hmm.
मेंट फॉर मी. So that time my mother was very worried, and it was at that time when she started looking for answers through these astrologers and all those things. So, and even the elders in the family, and they all suggested the same thing कि कुछ कुल देवता नाराज हुए होंगे. Might be possible because my family had the ancestry. It's not from Kerala, it's from the Tulu speaking part of Karnataka, which is the southern Karnataka, Udupi, Mangalore, वो वाला region. सो देवर लाइक आपके जो एक्चुअल कुल देवता है, या आपके जो या तो फिर कुल देवता है या फिर कोई दैवा है जो छूट गए हैं वहां पे. तो 5 जनरेशन पहले, विच इज लाइक 125 years बैक, when they migrated to Kerala, they did not take the deities with them, and the deities are there somewhere, abandoned, and they are seeking some kind of, क्या कहते हैं कि खोज के आए वापस, कुछ खाना वाना खिलाएं या भोग चढ़ाएं, जो भी होता है. So when I heard these things, I was very intrigued, and a similar incident happened while I was attending a festival in Kerala, जहाँ पे you had this oracle, ठीक है, जिसको हम वेलिचपाड़ बोलते हैं in Malayalam. Again, that also involves some kind of a possession, ठीक है, and this was in a temple, and while attending this festival, this oracle comes and grabs my hand and says, "Ki, whatever you do in life, it will have something to do with the undead, right? Whatever career path you choose." And at that time, I had written like a couple of books, and I was working on my first film as well, and all of them were in the horror genre. So at that time, I assumed कि हाँ शायद horror के वजह से undead बोला है, right? And again, the whole thing कि there is, you have to trace back your ancestry and the bloodline, and you have to find out कि कौन किसको पूछते थे आपके पूर्वज. And the thing is, when I started, digging deeper, I was looking for answers. We didn't even know कि हमारा कहाँ पे था घर वहाँ पे, right? And the eldest members of the family, they had all started passing away, so it was very difficult to get to that conclusive answer कि आप कहाँ से आए हो. But then I got married after that, and my wife comes from the region, so it became very easy for me to track. थोड़ा बहुत ज्यादा मुझे
Yeah.
हेल्प मिलने लगा कि हाँ ये लोग यहाँ पे रहते थे 50 साल पहले, 70 साल पहले, हाँ एक ऐसी फैमिली रहती थी, या 100 साल पहले ये लोग रहा करते थे, फिर छोड़ के केरला चले गए. तो द विलेज लॉज आर देयर, राइट? सो वो सब मुझे मिलने लगा, एंड दोज थिंग्स वर वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, ठीक है. एंड उसी के साथ मुझे ये भी पता चला कि हाँ, जो भी रहते थे वहां पे 100-150 साल पहले, वो कुछ स्पिरिट डेटीज यानी कि दैवास को भी वहां पे उनकी पूजा वगैरह होती थी. नाउ दैट्स व्हाट इंट्रिग मी. सो नाउ आई वांटेड टू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इट इज, व्हाट वर द डेटीज दैट माय एंसेस्टर्स वर्शिप्ड, ठीक है. बिकॉज आई वाज ब्रॉट अप इन दिल्ली, सो अगेन केरला वाले रूट से भी कट ऑफ होके ही मैं बड़ा हुआ हूँ,
Absolutely.
ठीक है.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to know more about Kerala, but then this is like what my ancestors, uh, you know, lived. So again, now I wanted to know what my ancestors used to worship, and how was their life in that part of the country. Although बहुत ज़्यादा difference नहीं है, काफी similarities हैं, language थोड़ा बहुत different है, but again there are differences, right? So I think that was the trigger point. That was where the journey began. And then I don't know, I just started the journey. I started that research, and this book was born out of it.
So when you were doing the research, Hari, and when you actually went to your native place and when you actually saw a lot of things and a lot of symbols and a lot of elements,
Mm.
before you went there, was there some kind of skepticism in you, or were you aware that no, this is something that really is prominent and prevalent, and there is some really strong base on such things? Because I'll tell you personally what I believe, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this. I personally believe that these practices are genuine practices. I absolutely, a lot of hosts would not want to give their personal opinions. I don't shy away from
Mm.
doing that. I absolutely believe that these processes are, they have a very strong level of reasoning as well. It is not completely metaphysical, because a lot of angles are involved in these things. It's psychological, it is emotional, it is physical, it is related to elements, it is related to symbolism, and they all combine and they produce these rituals. So I absolutely believe, and I can completely relate to what you're saying. My mother used to also, go to astrologers, and they used to say the same thing कि अरे आपने अपनी कुल देवी को नहीं पूजा.
Mm.
आपने so our कुल देवी is in Gurgaon, Sheetla Mata.
Oh, Shitla
Yeah,
Mata. Okay.
Sheetla Mata. And they were like कि अरे आप वहां नहीं गए, आपने ये नहीं करा, आप कुल देवी का मैं तो नाम भी नहीं जानता था. And then he used to give some remedies. I never used to believe कि अच्छा remedies करना जरूरी है, but when I saw my mother
Mm-hmm.
actually do these things, surprisingly things used to turn out positive in my life. And I always used to believe that there is some sound, there's something behind these things that have to be explored in a very nice and an open-mindedness. And that is exactly what I found in a book. You have taken a very positive approach to this subject. You have not tried to make any speculations. You have really stuck to the ground reality. And you have given such personal anecdotes and incidents which actually blew me away, Hari. So that is why I really wanted to ask you. So kudos to you, man.
Usually, when an urban person writes a book, हर चीज को हम रैशनलाइज कर देते हैं कि
बिल्कुल।
हाँ, ऐसा ऐसा होता है, ये साइंटिफिक ऐसा होता है, वगैरह वगैरह. Even if you look at, I think we spoke before the recording, we spoke about how you would read a scholar's, uh, a scholarly work. But then even if you look at anthropologists or scholars, they also have this very rational approach to these subjects. I mean, for them, it's just subject. It's not religion. It's not faith,
Hmm.
right? But what I've tried to do is I've tried to write a book about a belief system from the point of view of the people who believe in that system.
Absolutely.
So it's not dismissive.
Yes.
Okay, it's not just about finding out the whole I mean the social जो एक सेटअप था पुराने जमाने में, सिर्फ उसके ऊपर क्रिटिसिज्म नहीं है. इट्स ऑल्सो अबाउट व्हाई इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट, व्हाई इट्स इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर द पीपल ऑफ द रीजन.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that's what makes the book very different from other books.
And it was, it clearly was from the get go. You can notice that, and that is absolutely phenomenal. So you know, uh, okay. So I'm gonna take up. So there are a lot of highlights, Hari, that I've taken from the book,
Mm-hmm.
which really hit me, and I wanted to explore more on what is written. So let's take up a question, and I'm gonna start with the highlight. Where do spirits come from? Do they live in our world? Do they live in another realm? Is this spirit realm coexisting in ours and in another dimension? So, with this highlight, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. One, could you explain the term spirit and then also
Mm-hmm.
spirit worship? And why I'm asking this thing, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. When I hear the word spirit, na Hari, मुझे पता नहीं
Mm-hmm.
क्यों वो colloquial word बहुत लगता है ये. I mean, when I hear the word spirit, I resonate more with the Western culture somehow, because spiritualism,
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, all of
Mm-hmm.
these words we have imported from the English language, right? तो spirit का एक बार आप मतलब बताइए, और एकदम आप Indian centric, from the perspective of our geography, where we Indians belong from, and then what is spirit worship? So once we do understand what is spirit, then we'll understand why we need to worship. We can't worship something that we don't understand.
So even with respect to the Indian subcontinent, it's very difficult for me to just explain क्योंकि हर एक रीजन में इट्स a different meaning altogether.
Yes, yes,
ठीक है.
yes.
स्पिरिट को आप एक आत्मा के रूप में भी देख सकते हो. कई जगह पे एक आत्मा को ही स्पिरिट का दर्जा दिया जाता है, और कई जगह पे इट्स a spirit deity. That's why I use the term spirit deity and
Yeah,
not spirits in my book,
yeah.
right? So in general, now again, this is me being very general here. In general, if you look at spirit, then I'm most probably talking about the Atma, or this energy which is keeping you and me alive, which is keeping you and me, we are talking to each other. And the moment this energy goes out, body is just a vessel, ठीक है, खत्म. You drop down, right? And then you either decompose or you're burnt, or I think Meenakshi Diwan gave you a very good episode about it. So yeah, I won't get into that. But the thing is, whatever is this urja or energy which keeps you alive, that is the spirit. Okay. Now, the common जो एक परसेप्शन है, आई मीन ये तो हम सबने सुना है कि शरीर नश्वर होता है, सॉरी, शरीर
आत्मा,
नष्ट होता है, आत्मा अमर रहता है.
अमर रहता है.
सो वो अमर जो है, वो आत्मा जो है, दैट इज द रियल यू, राइट? वॉट एवर बॉडी यू गेट, फॉर द नेक्स्ट लाइफ यू विल गेट अनदर बॉडी. It could be a human body, it could be some other animal, it could be an insect, it could be anything. Or you could go back and join the Parabrahman. That takes that spirituality wala route, right? So it's all interconnected. Now, again, if you go with Madhvacharya's principle, then you never join the Parabrahman.
Yes,
Parabrahman is distinct from the Atman, right? So, not going into all those debates here. So, एक जनरल व्यू में अगर ये स्पिरिट ही एक्चुअल एग्जिस्टेंस है, then we are not able to see spirits, right? अगर कोई आके कह भी देता है कि दिखता है, या कोई डिवाइस लेके आता है, या ईएमएफ मीटर में टिंग 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 हो रहा है, आई डोंट रियली थिंक दैट्स स्पिरिट्स एट ऑल, right? If that's the case, then does that mean that there is a dimension which we cannot perceive जहां पे ये स्पिरिट्स रहते हैं? क्योंकि अगर आत्मा ही आपको जिंदा रख रही है, द मोमेंट दिस Atma leaves the body, where does it go? Right? I hope you're still with me here.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay. So either it stays in this world, but we cannot perceive it. Like Carl Jung ने कहा है कि uh, हम अपने लिमिटेड परसेप्शन से सिर्फ इतना ही देख सकते हैं. ठीक है, मेरे को चश्मे है तो मैं चश्मे के साथ इतना देख सकता हूँ, थोड़ा ज्यादा देख सकता हूँ. बाइनोकुलर लगाऊंगा, थोड़ा और आगे देख सकता हूँ. ठीक है, एक वीडियो कैमरा लगाऊंगा तो थोड़ा और ज्यादा आगे जाके
Yeah.
देख सकता हूँ, बट उससे ज्यादा मैं नहीं देख सकता हूँ.
Yeah, frog in a pond. Absolutely.
राइट, यू जस्ट अ फ्रॉग इन अ पॉन्ड. सो जो एक अनकॉन्शियस लेवल पे जो चीजें हैं, नो आई एम नॉट इवन टॉकिंग अबाउट द सबकॉन्शियस हियर, अनकॉन्शियस लेवल पे जो चीजें हैं वो जो हम परसीव नहीं कर सकते, दैट डजंट मीन दैट इट डजंट एग्जिस्ट.
Absolutely.
ओके. नाउ नाउ इज दैट जो आपका आपके स्टेटमेंट में मैंने बोला है, क्या वो इसी प्लेन में एग्जिस्ट करते हैं जहाँ पे हम रह रहे हैं? सो देन दैट स्पिरिट वर्ल्ड इज इन दिस सेम फिजिकल वर्ल्ड जहाँ पे हम रह रहे हैं. सो हो सकता है, आई मीन दिस इज जस्ट फॉर,
Yeah, yeah, but
आई
it's
मीन
absolutely, yeah, we also
it's
trying
very
to
much
understand.
possible कि
Yes,
there's a spirit right behind you, but you
absolutely.
cannot perceive it.
Yeah.
ठीक है, but it's also possible that it's a different dimension, a different world, which is completely different from, disconnected from our world. मैंने सिर्फ यही मैंने उसमें
Yes.
क्वेश्चन किया है. सो दैट्स लाइक यू सेड, इट्स अ सेल्फ इंक्वायरी कि है क्या, क्योंकि
Yes.
ईदर वे वी कैन नॉट परसीव इट.
Hmm.
राइट नाउ इफ यू आर सेइंग कि हाँ स्पिरिट वर्ल्ड कोइंसाइड्स विद आवर वर्ल्ड, या कुछ कनेक्शन है जिसके थ्रू, लाइक यू हैड इंटरस्टेलर में, यू हैड दिस वर्म होल जिसके थ्रू यू ट्रैवल टू अनदर प्लैनेटरी सिस्टम वगैरह वगैरह, तो ऐसा कुछ है पाथ विच द स्पिरिट्स टेक टू कम हियर और समथिंग, देन इट इज पॉसिबल दैट यू आर स्टैंडिंग देयर एंड पीछे से कुछ हिला या गिरा, एज इन लाइक देयर इज अ बुक बिहाइंड यू, इट फॉल्स डाउन, देन यू टेक इट एज एन ओमेन. दैट इज
Yes.
व्हाई, in fact this is part of another research that I'm doing. In the olden days, and in fact it's there in Daiva as well, I've used the code there. In the olden days, Shakun Apshakun ko, they were not treated as incidents, they were treated as beings.
Yes.
ठीक है, अगर कोई बिल्ली रास्ता काट रही है, और बिल्ली रास्ता काटना, इट्स नॉट एन इंडियन बिलीफ, इट्स एन इम्पोर्टेड वन.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, it could be a crow passing from the right side of your face. ऐसा हुआ तो it's considered a bad luck. Yeah, it's considered a good luck. I don't remember exactly, but then that's an omen which some kind of a being has thrown at you so that you take the necessary precautions. ऐसा ऐसी मान्यताएं हैं. So therefore you ask this question. So if at all there are beings like that, then are they living? Are they guests in our world? Or are they the original occupants of our world? Because we believe that as humans, we own this world. We don't even think about the other animals or trees or in तभी तो पेड़ भी काट रहे हैं, सब काट रहे हैं. We are only thinking about us. ठीक है? Now, from on a metaphysical level, do these beings exist on a different plane, or they exist in our own plane? That's what I have tried to explore. I don't have conclusive answers. I don't have any
Absolutely.
answer at all.
Yeah, yeah. So it's something similar. So when the dinosaurs were roaming this earth, Hari, right?
Hmm.
The fire was there, but were they able to invent it? Were they able to extract it? Were they able to create the minerals and everything? But it was there. It's just
Right.
that they were not evolved enough to understand what to do, what not to do with the areas
Right,
that they are
right.
living in, right? A second part, Hari, of this question. See, what I'm trying to wrap my head around, right? In India, if I talk about the entire India, I'm not talking about a specific geography right now, because I have seen a lot. Okay, I'll give you a very basic example where I'm coming from. ठीक है? बचपन से जब मैं कोई एग्जाम देने जाता था, राइट, हमको बोला गया था कि यार दही चीनी खा के जाया करो, राइट. I remember when I was giving an examination for IIT, which I knew I wouldn't be able to crack, my mom used to still do certain ritualistic processes, which now I look back, they look like a transaction. So how I see it, an human was trying to appease a higher being or a deity in a transactional way to gain something out of it.
Right.
And now if I look at it, now that I've read a book, now if I look at it, I can see that, yeah, this is also kind of a spirit worship, because there was a transaction. You wanted something to happen. Now it could be protection, it could be fertility, it could be anything that you wanted. So this is where I'm coming from. You see a lot of these things in Indian ecosystem and Indian subcontinent in one form or the other. It might not be very elaborate, as it happens in specific areas, but it can be as small and as trivial as doing a puja with all these symbolisms in lieu of getting something in return. So that is where I'm coming with this question for spirit worship. Why do you think in areas wherein these traditions and cultures exist, why do you think they started in the first place? Was it because the natives wanted some kind of return or benefit that they thought could only be given to them by these spirits? So what do you think could be the origin, or why even worship these entities in lieu of something, or they could be any just something that has been orally transmitted, so people are just following the traditions just to validate the traditions. So just wanted to understand that.
No, I think then you have to go back to religion itself. ठीक है, it cannot be, ये सिर्फ हम इसी चीज के लिए सीमित नहीं रख सकते हैं. Not just for spirit worship, for any kind of religion, even for a monotheistic religion, you have to go back to where it started, and it started from this very existential question कि हम यहाँ कैसे आए, कौन लेके आया, ठीक है, इसके बाद क्या है. ठीक है, द मोमेंट इसके बाद क्या वाला क्वेश्चन आता है ना, वहां पे एक डर आता है. ठीक है, सो उस डर से यू स्टार्ट मेकिंग, नाउ दिस इज अ वेरी एथिस्टिक वे ऑफ लुकिंग एट
Yeah.
थिंग्स. ठीक है, उस डर के वजह से यू क्रिएट आंसर्स फॉर समथिंग, अ हायर पावर विच इज गवर्निंग एवरीथिंग दैट्स गोइंग ऑन हियर. कि हाँ, इसके बाद देयर इज एन आफ्टर लाइफ, उसके बाद ये, इसके बाद वो. अगर आपने ये नहीं किया इस लाइफ में, देन वो रूल्स फिर धीरे धीरे एड ऑन होते हैं, राइट. एंड देन आपने ये नहीं किया, ये पाथ नहीं लिया, देन यू गो टू दिस नेगेटिव प्लेस. और आपने ये पाथ लिया, देन यू गो टू द हैप्पी प्लेस. ठीक है, देन देयर आर नो कंक्लूसिव आंसर्स.
Yeah.
ठीक है, नाउ कमिंग बैक टू द क्वेश्चन. यूजुअली अगेन दिस इज व्हाट मोस्ट एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट बिलीव कि कहीं पे भी, चाहे वो अफ्रीका में हो, ठीक है, या इंडिया में हो, द प्रिमिटिव रिलीजन, इट स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम फियर. ठीक है, जैसे कि अगर आपके बारिश, व्हेन वी वर एन एग्रेरियन सिविलाइजेशन, कहीं पे भी हो, बारिश अगर ज्यादा तेज हो जाए, क्रॉप्स खराब हो जाए, देन यू आर डन, यू आर गॉन, यू स्टार्व, राइट. या अगर बारिश ही ना हो, देन ऑल्सो यू स्टार्व, योर क्रॉप्स आर गॉन, फैमिन्स आ सकते हैं. उसको अवॉइड करने के लिए यू स्टार्ट अपीजिंग द रेन गॉड्स. एंड हमारे यहाँ तो द रेन्स आर कनेक्टेड विद इंद्र, they're connected with Naga Devatas, ठीक है, and in some other places it must be connected with some other kind of spirit deity भी हो सकते हैं, ठीक है, and in some other country it might be something else. And there are actually stories of appeasing the rain gods which are very similar in all your major civilizations. ठीक है, इंद्र और वृत्र की कहानी हम यहाँ पे सुनते हैं, ऐसी ही एक कहानी वहां नॉर्स माइथोलॉजी में भी है, बिटवीन थॉर एंड यॉर्गमैंडर. सो इस तरह से, सो समवेयर देयर इज दिस कॉमन एलिमेंट ऑफ फियर कि बारिश वाले भगवान को हमने प्लीज किया,
Yeah.
देन सही टाइम पे बारिश, सही अमाउंट का बारिश आएगा, एंड वील हैव अबंडेंस ऑफ क्रॉप्स, एंड हम आबाद होंगे या जो भी है. सो आई थिंक दैट फियर इज वेयर यू बिगिन. बट देन इवेंचुअली वो फियर जो है, इट गेट्स रिप्लेस्ड व्हेन इट बिकम्स फेथ. इट्स रिप्लेस्ड बाय लव, most of the cases. Okay, and that's what you see these days when somebody says मैं कृष्ण भक्त हूँ. वो बंदा अगर वो दिल से कह रहा है, तो इट्स बिकॉज ऑफ लव, नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ फियर कि कृष्णा विल पनिश मी. ठीक है, it's because of love.
Yeah.
Same for other gods and other religions. I think that's how religions evolve. So if you go back to that primitive man's thing, either हो सकता है कि उसके सामने भगवान साक्षात रूप में प्रत्यक्ष हो गए थे, ठीक है, and उसने भगवान को देखा है, and then he has been carrying on that story. He couldn't write, so he passed it on. It's very much possible. There is theory कि you must have also heard of it, ancient alien theory कि aliens आए थे, उनको भगवान मान लिया, and then whatever it is. So yeah, but those are all speculations, not really things that a scientist or an anthropologist would believe.
Makes sense.
This
Yeah.
is how I can answer this. I mean, I
Yeah.
cannot give you a conclusive answer for this
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I didn't exist at that time.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Hari, which brings me to the next question specific to the book. and very specific to the kind of terminologies we have used and the processes involved. It is worth
Mhm.
noting that in the world of Tuluas, Bhutas are not always a malevolent spirit, but rather protective spirits and deities. So I want you to explain as briefly or as in detail, whatever makes sense to you, Bhuta, the word Bhuta and Bhuta Kola, both the things.
Hmm. So pehle, before I start explaining what is Bhuta and Bhuta Kola, because that's very specific to this region or this book, at least. In general, what is Bhuta? You have to tell me. Please tell me.
So anything which scares the shit out of me that I
No,
cannot understand.
no, absolutely not.
Dead
Bhuta
entities?
is Bhuta is something which existed, which doesn't exist now. कहाँ से आता है? भाव
Yeah.
शब्द से. The root
Yeah.
word is bhava. Bhav is to be. So which was is Bhuta. Okay. So now anything which existed. Again, we are talking about existence.
Hmm.
Now, if we go back 3 or 4 questions, we talked about spirit, Atma. Atma, जब तक आपके शरीर में है, you existed. The moment the Atma left you, you ceased to exist, right? So a very similar thing here. That's where I'm going to connect these two things. भूत वो है जो अब exist नहीं करता है. So that means the spirit which kind of went out of your body, or the Atma which went out of your body, it kind of सो अकॉर्डिंग टू द हिंदू बिलीफ सिस्टम ये होता है कि एक प्रेत करके एक वर्ड भी आता है, ठीक है. आत्मा निकलती है, देन यू हैव टू परफॉर्म द फ्यूनरल, और फ्यूनरल के टाइम तक वो एक प्रेत आत्मा बन के रहता है, एंड इफ द फ्यूनरल इज परफॉर्म करेक्टली देन इट गेट्स मोक्षा और इट गेट्स गोज इन टू द नेक्स्ट पितृलोका. इस तरह से होता है. नहीं होता, मे बी इट्स दुर्मरणम, या it's an accidental death, or it's something else, and then that this is all the beliefs. Okay, there is no proof or anything, it's just what is believed. Then that spirit or that pret kind of wanders around, जिसको हम यूजुअली बोल देते हैं कि भूत भटक रहा है या भूत प्रेत पिशाच है. ठीक है, ये वहां से आता है ये. ठीक है. अब यूजुअली जब हम भूता कहते हैं, हमें सबसे पहले दिमाग में वही जाता है, राइट?
Yes.
सो हियर नाउ, with respect to this book and to the region which we are talking about, वहां पे Bhuta Kola, Bhuta, these are the terms used for the spirit deities. ठीक है. And there are different types of deities. Some of the deities are actually animistic spirits, जो किसी टोटेम या किसी एनिमल के टोटम से इवॉल्व है, जैसे पंजुर्ली जिसको आपने कांतारा में देखा है.
Yes.
That has evolved from the wild boar.
Wild boar.
Why wild boar? Because wild boars used to, destroy crops and everything. So this is again the anthropological viewpoint. So then the earliest settlers, they started propitiating this totem or this spirit form of the boar, so that वो आके crops को destroy ना करे. That is one of the views of the anthropologists. ठीक है. And then you got the tiger spirit, which protects your calves and everything. Otherwise, if it's not propitiated, then the calves fall sick or they start dying. इस तरह से, these are the beliefs. ठीक है. Then you've got spirits of martyrs, जो युद्ध में मारे गए, वैसे
Or
spirit deities
warriors.
हैं.
Yeah, warrior
Warriors
brothers.
हो गए. हाँ, you have the warrior brothers go to Chennai, and were very famous there. And very similar concepts are there in Kerala as well. Like you've got the Kalari deities. ठीक है. And the word Kalari and Garodi, which is in Tulunadu, they're both evolved from the same roots. So you have similarities there as well. Then you've got your uh, spirit deities that have evolved from your Puranic gods.
Yes.
Like you've got Nandi Gone, who has evolved from Nandi. But of course, there are people who say, no, it's not evolved from there. So these are viewpoints. Again, I cannot give you a conclusive answer because, again, I wasn't there. I have only read or I've only heard what I've heard from other people. So then you've got deities who have come from people who died, or people who, gave up their life. So यहाँ पे they are actually like I explained earlier, they are spirit atmas who came back, either sometimes to seek revenge. Like there's a story about Kalurti and Kalkuda, which I mentioned, who were wronged in while they were humans, and then they came back to haunt those who did wrong to them. Okay, and then they had to be propitiated and venerated, and now they are one of the most powerful spirit deities of the region. So इस तरह से काफी सारे spirit deities हैं. ठीक है, and the thing is the word bhuta sometimes it's used commonly. ऐसा नहीं है कि use नहीं होता है, but most people, like what I have from what in my experience, prefer the term daiva. Daiva has a more has a divine क्या कहते हैं, it's very divine, and again क्या कहते हैं, it's a matter of respect as well, क्योंकि unfortunately भूता बोलने से, especially people who are not from the region, they kind of connect it with ghosts for some
I
reason,
did the same thing.
which I mentioned in the
Absolutely.
beginning. Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
exactly, because that's
Yeah.
how, see,
Yes.
it's because of that,
Yes. Absolutely.
right? So either you have to clear, make it crystal clear कि इसके ये होता है, ये होता है, but you don't get time for that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think most of the people these days, they use the term daiva. Bhuta is also used interchangeably, and yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. So
And Bhuta Kola or
yes.
Daiva Kola. So Kola, the word means क्या कहते हैं? It's a embellishment. आप किस एक आपने एक रूप बनाया हुआ अपना. ठीक है, even in Malayalam we have the word kolam in the kolam order, right? So kola is jada kola. I mean, that's in Tulu. Kola is your embellishment, the form you have created for yourself. And if you look at kola, the dance form, you'll see that a person, a normal human being, um, starts to invoke the spirit deity through pardhanas. And pardhanas are what? They are not mantras, they are Tulu folk poems about the deity. ओके, एंड उस प्रार्थना को वो बोल बोल के उस स्पिरिट डेटी को इन्वोक करके, इट इज बिलीव्ड that the spirit deity enters them and possesses that body of the human being, the dancer. And then the dancer, he also applies this makeup on his face. Okay, and the person's appearance changes completely.
Hmm.
So half an hour before the ritual, the person who looked like you and me, during the ritual, he looks like a sakshat deity.
Yeah.
भगवान की तरह आपके सामने दिखता है. ठीक है, उस फॉर्म को कोला कहते हैं, बट नाउ वी कॉल दैट डांस कोला डांस. सो दैट्स भूता कोला और दैवा कोला. इन सम प्लेसेस इट्स आल्सो कॉल्ड नेमा, इस तरह से बोलते हैं उसको. सो दैट्स दैट.
Hari, because in the book it is written, and you have also been to many of these kolas to actually see and witness. जब आपने पूरा ये प्रोसेस देखा and when you actually saw the transformation of the vessel of the person in which that higher power incarnated, आपको भी लगा कि हाँ यार ये तो, when you saw for the first time, did you also felt कि यार this is it the same person? Has it completely changed? Was it that visible?
तो फर्स्ट टाइम तो एक्चुअली मुझे याद भी नहीं है, क्योंकि मैंने बचपन में देखा है. ठीक है, प्रॉपरली याद नहीं है. उसके बाद जो रिसेंटली देखा है वो मुझे याद है. सी थिंग इज, लाइक आई सेड, a person who is a normal human being जो शर्ट या धोती पहनता है, and then during the kola ritual, the person face, it's either yellow colored or black colored depending on which deity the person is representing. Long hair, and you've got this crown, and some deities have crowns, some don't have crowns. There's different hierarchies and all those involved there. Then if it's a female deity, then there's a sari. If it's a male deity, then appropriate costume will be there, and you won't be able to identify the person at all just from this appearance itself. Okay, so there itself, it's like, okay. And then later on, when you see the person, in fact, that has happened to me after. So during the research, so one of the first colas that I attended, it was a family cola. So colas can happen, it could be like घर में जो होता है, घर वाले होते हैं उसमें. Then it could be for the गांव, इसमें सारे गांव वाले होते हैं, या फिर टेम्पल से रिलेटेड हो सकता है. इस तरह से डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ डिफरेंट लेवल्स ऑफ कोलाज आते हैं. तो दिस वाज लाइक अ फैमिली का ही था, एंड आई वाज देयर, आई वाज इनवाइटेड देयर, तो मैं वहां गया. तो जिस सो दैट वाज द कल्लुर्टीज कोला. कल्लुर्टी की स्टोरी, यू मस्ट हैव रेड इट. the second part. It's the first story in the second part. And it was beautiful. It was awe inspiring. And I had pictures and this is clarity in my head. I mean, for me, this तरह से मैं visualize कर रहा हूँ because that's the first time I've seen that deity's cola. ठीक है वायलेट ऑलमोस्ट रेडिश वायलेट कलर का एक फेस किया है मैंने इनफैक्ट मेरे इंस्टाग्राम में है वो पिक्चर एंड सो आई हैड दिस फेस इन माय माइंड एंड आफ्टर द कोला आई went to meet the person who was a dancer. I couldn't even identify him. मैं ढूंढ रहा हूँ वो रहा करके and yeah, so that's the transformation. Now, coming to the performance, a lot of energy is required.
Yeah.
If you are there, I mean, if you're witnessing a kola, you will wonder. हम लोग तो मतलब 2 बार जॉगिंग मतलब 1000 स्टेप जॉग करने के बाद हालत खराब हो जाती है यहाँ पे पता नहीं कितने स्टेप्स जाते हैं और इट्स नॉट जॉगिंग इट्स वेरी क्या कहते हैं बहुत इंटेंस होता है ये रिचुअलिस्टिक डांस इट्स नॉट इजी and there are a lot of miraculous feats they perform they with fire with sometimes it's with a sword I mean it depends on the deity and sometimes it's something else so and it goes on for a long time also it's not like कि 5 मिनट 10 मिनट का है नहीं it goes on and there are different phases. I mean, this again depends on which daiva is being
Called
propitiated.
upon.
If it's
Yeah.
yeah, so some deities have this 3 phases. जिसमें पहले phase में it's just whatever dress they are wearing. Second phase में there is some kind of an attachment to the body. ठीक है, and to the middle or the lower part of the body. In the third phase, there is something that's attached to the shoulder and to that goes to the top of the head. And in certain areas, like as you go southwards, like now again, I'm coming to Kerala in some Teyyams. Same, again, same concept. Teyyam में we've got पता नहीं इतना फुट ऊंचा वो लगाते हैं उनके ऊपर ठीक है
Yeah. Huh.
हाँ आनी वगैरह जो है आई मीन द हेड गियर या हेड गियर के ऊपर जो लगता है those things weigh a lot it weighs more than the person himself yet they wear it and they dance and they're able to carry themselves like anything. That's superhuman. That's where you actually start to believe that this cannot be human. This is
Yeah.
something above that.
Yeah.
At least that's where I think the devotion also comes in there. And recently there was a video which was very viral. I think it was from the Kannur region only, or maybe somewhere there where it was again, it was a Teyyam, I think so. I don't know. I'm not sure. Somebody had shared it with me, and the dancer is like he's spinning in the air. I mean, how? I don't know. It's not an AI generated video or anything. It's from a live performance. So yeah,
No,
those
makes
things are
sense.
there. So those things kind of make you wonder how. Either they have a lot of energy, and if yes, then great.
Could you elaborate on how these specifically the Tulu communities help safeguard these cultural practices? Also, why are these specific communities, Tulu communities, chosen as medium for spirit position? Is there a particular cultural, historical? So basically, ये community कैसे इसको safeguard करेंगी coming generations के लिए, forthcoming generations के लिए? I'm sure the forthcoming generation would be asking questions. They would take a different approach. They would probe as well. So I truly want to understand कि अगर अब तक ये preserve करते हो आया है, तो आगे भी ये कैसे preserve ये they can make sure that yes it will be get preserved and people would not just follow just for the sake of following it but they would understand the reason. So let's just dissect this a little bit.
How do we preserve culture? When we follow it, when we pass it on to the next generation. ठीक है? When you stop passing it to the next generation, then वो cut off हो जाता है. और मैं इसको एक पर्सनल एग्जांपल से ही बोलता हूँ. When my ancestors they moved from the Tulu speaking region to Kerala, maybe एक जनरेशन तक उन्होंने इसको कुछ फॉरवर्ड पास किया होगा. दूसरे जनरेशन में थोड़ा कट ऑफ हो गया. तीसरे में और ज्यादा कट ऑफ हो गया. मतलब मेरे पापा के जनरेशन में तो पूरी तरह कट ऑफ हो चुका था.
Yeah.
और मेरे जनरेशन में विच इज द फिफ्थ जनरेशन कुछ भी नहीं था. वी डिडंट इवन नो अबाउट इट. हाँ क्योंकि मैं नॉर्थ केरला में बड़ा हुआ था 3 4 साल 5 साल तक. सो आई न्यू अबाउट द तेयम्स. ठीक है. अपने एरिया में जो भी वहाँ के जो ऐसे स्पिरिट डेटीज है उनके बारे में जानता था मैं. ठीक है. बट देन अगेन आई केम टू दिल्ली। दिल्ली में आए तो, आई मीन गुड़गांव में आए तो मुझे तो कुछ, शीतला माता थी एक, ठीक है, एंड यू हैड अदर पुरानिक गॉड्स, शिव, हनुमान जी। उनके अलावा आई हैव नेवर कम अक्रॉस अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स, एटलीस्ट वेयर आई वाज लिविंग। ठीक है, प्रॉब्ली आई केम एट अ टाइम व्हेन गुड़गांव का अर्बनाइजेशन, आई मीन वो
Yeah.
पूरा मिलेनियम सिटी बनना चालू हो चुका था। ठीक है, आई केम व्हेन योर डीटीज एंड योर लाइफ स्टाइल, अपना एमजीएफ मॉल वगैरह वगैरह जब बनने लगा था। ठीक है, तो इफ a parent doesn't pass it on to the child, yeah, an uncle doesn't pass it on to the nephew, the niece, then it's cut off. So वो एक फैमिली के लेवल पे भी, so एक बेसिक यूनिट क्या होता है, एक इंडिविजुअल के बाद इट्स अ फैमिली, राइट? तो फैमिली के अंदर ही अंदर वो कल्चर प्रिजर्व नहीं हुआ तो खत्म हो जाएगी। नाउ फैमिली से बाहर जो यूनिट है वो आपका गांव या आपकी सोसाइटी या जो भी है, इफ यू टॉकिंग अबाउट रूरल प्लेसेस देन इट्स द गांव, the village. If you're looking at a modern society, a urban society, then if you're living in apartment, so apartment, अगर आपके अपार्टमेंट में जो भी कल्चर है, अगर ट्रेडिशंस को वहां पे नहीं फॉलो हो रहा है, लाइक फॉर इन माय केस, लाइक आई सेड, साल के 11 महीने हम वो ट्रेडिशन नहीं फॉलो कर रहे थे जो मेरे गांव में फॉलो करते हैं। वो सिर्फ एक महीने जब छुट्टियों में मैं जाता था वहां पे आई यूज टू सी, हाँ मेरे गांव में ऐसा होता है। ठीक है, so these things are required and the responsibility falls on, we cannot put that responsibility on the next generation कि वो आके पूछेंगे हमसे। ठीक है, we have to take up that responsibility, right? As a society, yes, like in case of the people of the Tulu speaking region, most people they have, you know, made sure कि it's passed on either through the oral literature, oral traditions that has been passed on from the communities that are doing it, which is a boon, which is why it's still there, despite of not having an officially recognized script. Okay, that's something to be very proud of. Then the families or the people who believe in this. Now, in case of religion, it's that, right? उस रिलीजियस वे ऑफ लाइफ को उनको वो फॉलो करते हैं। अगर वो फॉलो नहीं करेंगे या तो उनकी जो अगली जनरेशन है वो भी उसको नहीं फॉलो करेगी क्योंकि उनको पता ही नहीं है। So, for example, if you're migrated to the US or maybe some other, maybe to North India, वहाँ पे अगर your children या the next generation is not exposed to this form of worship, then they will obviously won't, they will be alien to that culture, right? So it's not their fault, and you cannot wait for them to ask you. You try to tell them कि ऐसा ऐसा है. It's up to them whether they want to accept it or not. इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं कि आप उनके ऊपर ठोको कि नहीं अब
Hmm.
करो, ये हमारा कल्चर है, क्योंकि ये भी होता है। ठीक है, सो या अल्टीमेटली दैट रूट लेवल पे इट्स अ फैमिली विच हैज टू डू इट, देन सोसाइटी के लेवल पे जो चलता है वो करना पड़ता है वो। सो दीज थिंग्स हेल्प, अदरवाइज इट विल बी लॉस्ट। ट्रस्ट मी, देयर आर पार्ट्स ऑफ द कंट्री, आई एम नॉट जस्ट, पूरी दुनिया को छोड़ो यार, इंडिया में ही ऐसे बहुत सारे डेटीज हैं जो आज के डेट पे किसी को पता भी नहीं है कि दे एग्जिस्ट या दे दैट दे एवर एग्जिस्टेड, बिकॉज समवेयर इट्स बीन वाइप्ड ऑफ। वो एक जनरेशन काफी है, अगर एक जनरेशन में डिस्कनेक्ट आ गया देन इट्स कट ऑफ, सेकंड जनरेशन में वो और ज्यादा खत्म हो जाएगा, थर्ड तक खत्म ही हो जाएगा। इट जस्ट टेक्स थ्री जनरेशंस टू वाइप ऑफ अ कल्चर।
I think it will also help, or it also helps when the forthcoming generation or the younger generation also participates in these events and see it for themselves as well. I remember मैं पढ़ा था डीएवी स्कूल में, so डीएवी स्कूल इज एन आर्य समाजी स्कूल. अब वहां पर दे यूज टू डू हवंस, दे नेवर यूज टू डू पूजा, वो हवंस करते थे. एंड आई वन डे वी पार्टिसिपेटेड इन अ हवन, एंड व्हेन आई सॉ ऑल दिस प्रीस्ट सिंगिंग इन यूनिजन, all those mantras and doing this thing, that whole atmosphere, otherwise I was very averse to such things, but जब मैंने देखा ये उस एटमॉस्फेयर का पार्ट बना, देन आई रियलाइज कि व्हाट पावरफुल दीज थिंग्स आर. अच्छा, मुझे उसका कुछ समझ भी नहीं आया कि मंत्र क्या बोल रहे, बट इट गेव मी समथिंग, वाओ दिस इज इनक्रेडिबल. I felt so, I could clearly see goosebumps, So I think also when the younger generation participates, when they see such things happening as well, they get a very strong validation.
दैट्स
Uh,
एग्जैक्टली व्हाट आई सेड, यू हैव टू शो इट टू देम।
yeah,
आप उनको दिखाइए कि
बिल्कुल.
ये हमारी कल्चर है, बट डोंट पुश इट ऑन
Push
देम।
it on.
उन पे तुम क्या कहते हो? वो मत करो कि यार ये तुम हमने किया तो तुम भी करो।
I feel that also pop culture, popular culture can play a very strong role over here. You're a screenwriter. You understand the magic of a good storytelling when it comes out in a very nice way cinematically. To be very honest, अगर कंतारा नहीं आया होती तो शायद हमारे जो हम उस रीजन को बिलोंग नहीं करते तो हमारे रेल में भी नहीं होता. Not even अभी wouldn't have even thought about it or known about it, talked about it. So do you think that popular culture can play a very strong role in not just the Bhuta Kola traditions, but all these traditions if they are able to bring them out in a very mass appealing way? And you are a screenwriter, you understand what this medium could also do if done rightly. So, what is your take on this?
These days, it's the short form content which is the king. Movies are in a very dire, bad situations. The movie business is in a very bad situation. But yes, definitely, the films, I mean, books, yes, they have an influence, but it only has influence on readers. And let me be very honest with you, that's a struggling minority. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we look at the medium which has the maximum influence. It's A, your visual media, B, social media. Okay. Visual media, obviously, you've got your films and web series. Kantara, had it not been there, even a lot of people from the region who were cut off might not have come back. Okay. And they portrayed it very beautifully with a lot of respect and everything. Similar movies have come out in other parts of the country, and it's good. It's good that we have got more movies about Puranic characters. It's very good because that's what we need. We have so many superheroes, and I mean divine entities, but no movies. हम लोग मार्वल देख के खुश होते हैं. नॉस
Thor, Odin.
माइथोलॉजी के थॉर को देख के खुश होते हैं. हम इंद्र पे कुछ भी नहीं बनता है. सो बनेगा भी बहुत गंदा बनेगा. सो आई मीन anyway, coming back to this thing, the second thing is social media. Social media is has that capability uh, to mount our culture on a huge canvas, which can be shared across in an instant. Okay, so yeah, these two mediums. I'm it's not just films. क्योंकि अभी films का एक वो खत्म हो रहा है. People are more used to scrolling through one minute का 90 seconds के clips.
Short form
So
content.
short form content is where everything's going to depend on.
I again there is a line in the book that I just want your opinion on as much as
Hmm.
possible. It is again something which is a self inquiry. Let's try it if we can dissect because it is a part of the ecosystem that you've written. It's a part of the book. It goes like this. Our folklores are full of omens, and I know that you have mentioned about these things, but still, both
Hmm.
good and bad. Okay, our folklores are full of omens, both good and bad. There are two kinds of invisible entities all around us: those that crawl on the land, and then those who fly in the air. And Hari, the reason why I'm asking and when I picked up this line, because it was specific in the end that those that
Hmm.
crawl on the land and those who fly in the air. So I just wanted to understand what do you mean by. So I do understand entities, but those who crawl on the land and those who fly in the air, are there certain examples that you can give? Anything that you have in mind just to expound on this specific line?
So it's very simple. Those who crawl on the land, as in, again, these are based on folk beliefs. Okay? We cannot prove it. So we are looking at those entities which can move on the land. They need a space beneath the legs, a horizontal space, right? A dimension, an x-axis जहाँ पे वो move कर सके. Okay? Now the second one are the ones which can travel through space, which doesn't need your x-axis, which is your ground or whatever, floor or whatever. वो है. For example, the concept of Dakini, which is my
Yes,
next,
we,
the
we, we can
current
talk
book.
on that. Yeah, let's go into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to use that
Yeah,
example here.
yeah.
Dakinis, क्या कहते हैं, um, the Tibetan concept of Dakini is उसके according, it's somebody who's a space traveler. And when we say or a sky goer or space traveler, इस तरह से बोलते हैं. When they say that, it not only means कि वो sky में travel करती है. What it means is was it's this entity is not its movement is not limited by space. It can pass through your doors and windows, multiple dimensions. इस तरह से. Okay. Now, a simpler way to look at what I've mentioned there is, or rather, the rational or a realistic way of looking at it is things that crawl on the land or walk on the land. There are creatures, there are snakes, there are scorpions, okay? There are insects, there are wild animals, right? Then you've got your creatures that fly in the air, you've got your birds, right? And so that's the rational look at it. So I think what I mentioned is these are the two types of invisible entities, right? So again, if you're talking about invisible entities, then these are these type of things which we perceive could have existed or are existing,
Because
and uh, they, uh, like I mentioned earlier, in the olden times, omens were considered to be entities. They were considered to be nouns and not some adjective, some verbs like incidents, right? So that means ki, if at all there's something, there's a entity which is beyond our limited perception, it is passing through the left side of a, uh body or something, or like it's right behind you and it makes a book fall, right? Then that's considered an omen. Okay, then there could be an entity which needs a ground beneath to travel. उसी के लिए मैंने crawl use किया हुआ है. Crawl kind of see, it's written from a human perspective, right? Anything that's below you crawls, anything that's equal to you walks, and anything that's above you flies.
yeah.
That's how we perceive our this hierarchy की आपसे जो ज्यादा पावरफुल है वो आपसे ऊपर है, वो उड़ भी सकता है. आपसे जो कम पावरफुल है वो नीचे से रेंगता है, इस तरह से. So again, whether it's real, whether it's a truth, I have no idea. But this was our belief. This was what's been passed down from generations. Yeah, and it's also possible. It's also possible that in fact, that particular quote, not quote, but about the omens, it's taken from Brihad Samhita. Okay? Brihad Samhita was not written 100 years back or 200 years back. It was written in 500 AD or something like that. ठीक है? And उस वक्त जो ऋषि थे, उन्होंने क्या कहते हैं, उस टाइम के साइंटिफिक नॉलेज को उन्होंने उसमें accumulate किया है.
Hari, the next question that I'm going to ask you, it's something again that piqued my interest. So I'm going to first I'm going to use that highlight. In the context of any possession ritual, the process of spirit possession may be seen as a manifestation of an altered state of consciousness or trance state. The term consciousness is of utmost importance here. Explain. So I want to understand, why did you write the term consciousness is of utmost importance here? And more or less that you have also tried to explain beautifully in the book, what you understand and perceive as the science of possession.
There's no science of possession. It's just based on what our scientists have talked about. But before that, what some other cultures who came to our country, they observed it, and then they have given it a very negative shade in their part of the world. And there are places where possession is even linked with mental disorders. So I'm not going to talk about all that. Okay? I'm just talking about consciousness. What is consciousness? You have to tell me that.
See, what I believe, a consciousness is that thing or an entity or whatever which makes us realize of our highest self. This is what I perceive. That makes us aware of our highest self. Now that depends on what level of consciousness you are, whether I'm able to understand or at what level I am, but it tries and helps you to realize your highest self. That entity I personally call as consciousness, which is ever present, by the way. Yeah.
Do you call yourself as the consciousness, or do you think it's this higher consciousness?
So I believe it is a higher consciousness which I could either be a part of or I could have an access of, but I am not sure whether I am also 100% conscious all the time. That also I'm not sure, because there are certain aspects and certain times in my life wherein I am subconscious, where I'm not at all conscious of what I'm doing. So I believe I might be a part of it. I might have access to it, but whether I am that higher conscious or not, no idea. Speculative.
Okay. So you're talking to me, you're aware of that, right?
Yeah.
So you're conscious right now.
Yes. Right now, yes.
Okay. So it's a consciousness within you which is able to perceive what is right in front of you. Okay. And it's ever present. When you go to sleep, you shut down for some time. Okay. You start dreaming, then subconscious से जो भी है वो ऊपर उठ के आता है. There are times when you're driving, you're going to work, you're thinking about something, and then suddenly you realize कि
Hmm.
तुम A point से B point पे आ चुके हो लेकिन बीच का कुछ याद नहीं.
Hmm.
That is also somewhere you were conscious, but somewhere your mind went away. Where did your mind go?
Hmm.
Okay. So now you have to tie up these concepts. Your existence, the fact that you are aware, the Atma. Again, I'm coming back to the Atma. Consider the Atma as the consciousness, your personal consciousness, yourself. Okay. Now, it is very much possible, like you said, that there's a higher self, and we are all kind of
Trying
part
to.
of that.
Yeah.
Either we are connected and we don't realize it, or we have to, go to a higher this thing
Yeah.
and be part of that.
And evolve in whatever way. Yeah.
And evolve. In that case, whatever is happening, right? It's all governed by that higher consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
ठीक है. अब इसको हम अद्वैता जो शंकराचार्य ने दी है उसके अगर लैंग्वेज में बात करें, बहुत सिंपल है. परब्रह्मन है, उसके अंडर हम सब वही परमात्मन और हम आत्मन. ठीक है. So whatever is happening, it's being governed by this higher power.
Yeah.
So all the knowledge that you have, I also automatically can have access to it.
Hmm.
But we need to find a way to access it. And for
Yes.
that, we have to connect. अब वो क्या कनेक्ट करना है, कैसे कनेक्ट करना है, we don't know. We can make theories कि ऐसा होता है, we can manifest, we can do this, we can do that, but actual में होता है नहीं होता है मुझे नहीं पता. I know I sound like somebody who believes in this and then somebody who just dismisses it. But that's the only way to approach it.
Yeah, that's a part of inquiry. That is exactly
That's the
Shankara's
part of
part.
inquiry.
That is
Correct.
Shankara's part.
Correct.
Yeah, he
Correct.
said that.
Exactly. Now, there's also another theory, okay? And which says that Paramatman जो है, it's completely disconnected. Atman is completely different and it cannot be attained वगैरह वगैरह कि and this is something which Madhvacharya has talked about in Dvaita. That's why Dvaita, dualism. It's all
Dualism
two
and
different.
Advaita, non-dualism. Absolutely.
नॉन ड्यूअलिज्म. ऑफ कोर्स अब उसके बाद वो बहुत इवॉल्व हुआ है. यू गॉट विशिष्ट अद्वैता व्हिच कंबाइंस बोथ कि हाँ दोनों
Yes.
अलग है, बट विद अ लॉट ऑफ पेनेंस एंड नॉलेज एंड इंक्वायरी, सेल्फ इंक्वायरी, यू कैन एक्चुअली बिकम पार्ट ऑफ
Yeah, you can
द
synthesize.
परब्रह्मन.
Yeah.
हाँ, इस तरह से बहुत सारी थ्योरीज हैं. एंड लेट्स कम टू कार्ल जूंग समवेयर जहाँ पे ही स्पोकन अबाउट द कलेक्टिव अनकॉन्शियस.
Acha, I'm not familiar with the Jungian philosophy.
That's okay. Simple way में बताता हूँ. Collective unconscious is the unconscious that exists all around from which we keep taking. Although our conscious उसमें वो सब हमें नहीं पता, ठीक है, ये सब है या था या जो भी है. It could be even from a previous generation, some information which has remained in the collective unconscious. जहाँ से we kind of take something and then we realize, oh, ये कैसे पता हमको?
A central server from where we can
A central server, exactly. Even Dvaita also works like that. If you kind of थोड़ा सा इसको एक हम अपने एक आईटी वाले एक उसमें लेके जाएंगे ना हम क्या कहते हैं उसको ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम के एक उसमें लेके
ecosystem
जाएंगे तो
yeah.
हाँ उसको लेके जाएंगे तो the whole idea of Parabrahman is like this centralized server.
Yes. And
जहाँ से
we ping for request.
exactly right and And it's not now this thing, oh, होता है, instantaneously होता है.
Yeah.
ठीक है. Now, if that is the case, right? If that is the case, whether I mean Advaita ho या Dvaita हो, कुछ भी हो, if there is a higher consciousness and we are all I mean छोटे छोटे consciousness है, ठीक है, self aware है, then if there is a way in which we can grab something from there and bring it inside us and then project it to the world which perceives us, then that is possession.
Brilliant. Beautiful.
I mean, that's the way I can explain. So, if now, let's talk about the spirit deity. If the spirit deity exists in that spirit dimension, or maybe around us, but we cannot perceive it, that is also connected to the supreme consciousness. ठीक है? Because it's part of the universe. ठीक है? उसको अगर हम अपने बॉडी में, हम अपने कॉन्शियसनेस के ऊपर उसको बिठाएं, जहां पे मैं वो कंसेप्ट बताया था ना, घोड़ा घोड़ा वाला,
Yes,
माउंट वाला,
yes, yes.
उसको हम अपने ऊपर बिठा लें, देन through us or through the vessel or the medium, the other people who cannot perceive it directly can perceive it through the human vessel.
And they can access it
That's
via that vessel.
via that vessel. And this is exactly how these mediums and these Velichapada, the oracles, that's how they work. In the olden times, like the concept of Velichapada is very popular in Kerala and it's very considered very powerful. Okay, people dismiss it as fake and everything, which is fine. Everybody has a right to inquire, okay, and believe. So, or not to believe. So the Velichapad ka concept, I don't know if you've seen it, but they're mostly found in Bhagavati temples. And जैसे नॉर्थ में हम कहते हैं ना माता आ गई
Mata aa
वगैरह
gayi.
वगैरह, काइंड ऑफ सिमिलर, नॉट सेम, differences है, but इसमें it's usually if the medium, the person is called a velichapada. And what is velichapada? Velicha means light. Pad is a speck or a धब्बा, ठीक है, या दाग, इस तरह छोटा सा जो होता है, a speck of light, ठीक है. So this is something which I've heard from somebody because this is not something that I can experience because I'm not that, ठीक है. So I've heard about it. And what I've heard is that when a velichapada, वो अपने कॉन्शियस से ऊपर उठता है when he gets possessed. और possession कैसे होता है? वही shaking, vigorous shaking, and you've got the वो सिल्क की एक, नॉट अ साड़ी बट धोती जैसा होता है, समटाइम्स इट्स इवन अ साड़ी, रेड कलर मोस्टली, इन एटलीस्ट इन केरला इट्स रेड कलर. हाथ में एक सिकल होता है, ठीक है, विच इज द जिसमें एक जिंगल,
Yes.
मतलब वो भी होता है, एंड उसके साथ ऐसे दे vibrate and
Vibrate.
shiver.
Yeah,
हाँ,
resonate
and
with
they,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
completely.
and then they are possessed. हाथ पैर में पायल भी होता है, ठीक है. Payal as in it's called a chilamba in Malayalam. A very similar thing which you find in Daivaradhane, it's called gaggara, the anklet, about which you must
Yes.
have read
Yes.
in the book.
Yes. Gaggara.
ठीक है?
Yeah.
Gaggara, right. So even in Tulu region, there is the concept of darshana patri. Again, darshana. Okay. What Velichapada does is when they get possessed, it's believed that their uh, self rises to that point above them, and it merges with the consciousness that's prevalent in the surroundings, and from there, the deity deity say they see the deity as a speck of light.
Yeah.
Something like that is what
Yeah.
I've heard.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called a Velichapada, which is a speck of light. And from there, they enter that altered state of consciousness. Jahan se they give these oracles. So in the olden days, everybody did not have access to these astrologers, or for even for
Yeah.
disputes, जो disputes
Yeah.
होते थे उसको solve करने के लिए, they had to go to these Velicha parts at the temple festivals, जहाँ पे they would give these oracles कि हाँ ऐसा करो, ये घर में ये problem है तो ऐसे करो, because they do this after going to that altered state of consciousness. क्योंकि हमारे state of, I mean, the belief was that in as a person, his judgment may be influenced by his own ideas. So once the person enters an altered state of consciousness, then it cannot be influenced by that human's error or something
Absolutely.
like that. So this is what I've tried to uh, convey in that particular statement. Again, it's something which you can dismiss totally. It's absolutely okay. But there are a lot of people who believe in it. And there are different ways to approach it. And one of the ways is to give some respect and try to understand where these concepts come from.
Absolutely. No, I think
Yeah.
one very small story that I'll say, which because I believe that these things can happen, because I think this is the way the consciousness works. You very beautifully said that you're getting that higher thing into you, and it can then benefit in whatever way or not. I think, Hari, similar concept applies to how Ganga came to this planet. Bhagirath
Bhagirath.
Bhagirath wanted something divine which never existed on this realm to come up to help the humanity. He did the all the processes that were required for her to come down. And
Hmm.
the reason why Shiva wanted to hold Ganga in his jatas was so that when these divine entities descend, the vessel could also break.
Break.
So it's very
Hmm.
important for the vessel to be prepared, to be consciously prepared to know that something of this force is trying to come down. And that is
Right.
how he controlled the flow of Ganga. So he got something higher that now humanity is benefiting from it. So I would want you to please say a couple of things about Dakini as well, because it is the most recent book that has
Hmm.
that you have written that has come out.
Hmm. So Dakini is my latest book. It's out now. It's been out there for almost 2 months now. It's
Yeah.
doing well. And the word Dakini, again, it has a lot of significance in Tibetan mythology as well as Hindu mythology. As I mentioned earlier, in Tibetan mythology, the Dakini is somebody who can, move across different dimensions of space and time, who helps in, transcendental meditation, and it's a very powerful entity, right? It's almost as important as the Buddha. Okay.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh, is it?
that's, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's there. Now, in the Hindu mythology, in our Hindu Puranas, Dakini is considered to be one of the attendants of Durga.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got your Dakini, Shakini, Hakini, is that I say? You've got multiple entities. And again, when you go to um, Tantra ke section mein jaoge, then again, there's a lot of other things that the experts would tell you. I'm not an expert in that, so I won't be able to tell you those things. But the thing is, Dakinis are very significant, very important part of our culture. However, what happened was, again, I'll have to take you back to like 7 or 8 years back, 6 or 7 years back, when, not 6 or 7, sorry, right before that podcast with Ranveer,
Hmm.
4 years back, when something tragic happened in my life. And usse pehle I was writing India's Most Haunted, which is a book of horror short stories based on real haunted places in India. While writing that book, I had shortlisted some 100 haunted places based on whatever we have in the public domain, that is in your newspapers and articles, famous stories, वगैरह वगैरह. So one of the things that caught my attention was witch hunts which happened in Odisha. Okay, Odisha में there is a Witch Hunt Prevention Act.
Okay.
Okay, and similar acts have been passed in different states, like in your eastern part of the country. It's there in Rajasthan as well,
Hmm.
and it prevents people from hanging or killing or punishing, ostracizing women by labeling them as
Is which?
witches.
Yeah.
Huh. And this happens in the lower strata of society, in tribal areas and all these things. Okay. And I, one of the stories which I read in the newspaper kind of created this rage in me. मुझे बहुत गुस्सा आया था पढ़ के कि अभी भी ऐसा होता है. And वहां पे the word is दाहिनी.
Dahini.
Okay, दाहिनी. And if you look at it, it's very close to your other Hindi word, dayan.
Hmm.
The word kind of, like I mentioned earlier, वो word इधर उधर जाता है अलग अलग
बिल्कुल
रीजन
बिल्कुल.
में, वो प्रोनाउंसिएशन चेंज
Dialect.
होता है
Absolutely.
डायलेक्ट या लैंग्वेज में. ठीक है. सो डायन, डायनी, डाकिन, ये सब कहाँ से आए? The meaning is the same. It's witches. But कहाँ से आया? डाकिनी से. Then I was like, अगर डाकिनी is somebody so important, who is a devi, who is an attendant of the devi. Attendant of a devi is the devi. शिव के
Absolutely.
गण को भी पूछते हैं
They
लोग.
are also
ठीक
divine.
है.
Yes.
हाँ, they're also divine. Similarly, if the attendant of a devi, देवी के जो गण हैं, वो भी उतने ही डिवाइन है जितनी वो देवी है. ठीक है. And in fact, if you further want to go back, then I think it's during when Sati immolated herself. At that time, Shiva got so angry when he gets the news. He creates all these entities. जिसमें भद्रकाली भी आती है.
To
ठीक
destroy
है.
Daksh Prajapati
हाँ.
and his.
हाँ. राइट. सो वीरभद्र, भद्रकाली, और भद्रकाली के साथ यू गॉट ऑल दीज डाकिनी. इस तरह से दिस इज ऑल्सो वन ऑफ द स्टोरी व्हिच आई हर्ड फॉर द origin of these attendants. And like an army, they go there and they destroy, like havoc on the whole this thing. So I was like, if the Dakini is a divine entity or an attendant of the goddess, depending on which culture you are talking about, then how can it be a witch? How can it be the root for words which are now being used for witches or denote witches? Okay? So that thing was always there. That idea was always there. But I couldn't write a story because, again, मुझे वो उसके कैरेक्टर्स नहीं मिल रहे. मुझे पता था कि ऐसा ऐसा है, मुझे इस इंसिडेंट को लेना है. इस न्यूज आर्टिकल, बहुत सारे न्यूज आर्टिकल, इट्स नॉट जस्ट वन न्यूज आर्टिकल. देयर इज इनफैक्ट somebody who is a Padma Shri Award winner. She passed away last year. Was an activist who has fought for the rights of these women you know, who were labeled as these witches. ठीक है. तो all these things were my inspirations, but I was not getting my protagonist. Now let's go back to 4 years back, right before, I mean, 4 months before that podcast, when that tragic incident happened in my life, about which I've not spoken here. When that incident happened, then वहां पे I saw the main character of my story in the member of my family जिसके साथ वो tragic incident हुआ. I mean, obviously it's linked to me as well. Then I saw that woman in pain, somebody who is letting go of something which was very dear to her. वहां पे I got my protagonist. Then the story started brewing and brewing, and I think it was right before the podcast, I was actually writing Dakini. बहुत डिले हुआ था. इनफैक्ट दैवा से पहले डाकिनी को आना था, but it was
Interesting.
delayed by almost a year. But because I got my character, I was able to write it. So Dakini is the story of a journalist from Bombay who had a very tragic. She lost her baby, so now she's not going back to her work because she's not able to move on from there. She's lost hope in her life. She's going through a very difficult time, very traumatic time, and then she takes up a story in a tribal part of the country far away from Bombay. ठीक है. And when she comes to this tribal region, there a woman, a pregnant woman on the verge of giving birth, has been labeled as a Dakini and she is about to be hanged. Then what she does to save her, that forms the basis of the story. So there's a very serious social message that Dakini conveys. But of course, it has elements of fantasy, mythology, and horror as well. To know that, you have to read the story. I can't tell you the entire thing here.
Yeah,
But this
absolutely.
is how Dakini happened. And there is a very strong connotation of the mother goddess, because at the end of the day, if Dakini is an attendant of Durga, then she is an attendant of the mother goddess. So she technically becomes a mother goddess or a part of the mother goddess. Again, here we bring that concept of a higher self disintegrating into different smaller sections. So is there is. So yeah,
Yeah, I
but with
can't
a
wait to.
different set of characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't wait to read Dakini now. I
Okay.
wanted to, but then I was finishing
Hmm.
Daiva and preparing for that.
Hmm.
But this is brilliant, Hari. I'll definitely read Dakini.
In the crucible of my experiences, I shed the shackles of doubt and embraced the profound truth that dwelled within the hearts of the people of Tulunadu. As I allowed it to sway and dance away, the strings of caste, religion, and language dissolved into the essence of truth that was above and beyond everything. For in the dance of existence, where the ethereal and the earthly entangle, it is the power of belief that propels us forward, that nurtures our souls, and that connects us to the infinite. And in that belief, in the eternal sacred realm, the spirit deities shall forever find their dwelling place, their presence felt by those who embrace the extraordinary, or in the language of the Western mind, embrace the light. Thus, as I bid farewell to the Satyalo of Tulunadu, I carry within me the indomitable, enduring legacy of the Daivas, the stories of oppression and revolt, and the unwavering truth that faith, in all its form, has the power to transcend the limitations of our existence and illuminate the path to our deepest, most profound selves. However, I promise you, my reader, that this is just the beginning. I will continue my search for the truth in another land, in another form of worship, in another book. The way this book started and proceeded on its own, like a giant wave carrying me forth, has been nothing short of a miracle. The cocoon that enshrouded me following the preceding year's tragedy dissolved. Along with it, the physical afflictions that had curtailed my ability to embark on long journeys faded. Those few months in Tulunadu not only led me closer to the discovery of my ancestral serpent grove, a mere stone's throw from Katil, but I also lived 1,000 lives that inspired me to finish this project. These 1,000 lives were not just mine. They belonged to every individual I encountered, every individual from those marginalized communities who kept this tradition alive, battling the tyrants of their time, and to the spirit deities whose stories of righteousness and revolt resonated within me. As articulated in the first chapter of this book, it was a voice that called to me, but I didn't know what it was then. Now I know that the voice that called me was the voice of truth, of Satyalo. This is Daiva.